Let me kick off with you, Elan. Can you just perhaps talk us through how South African media companies and print media companies specifically are dealing with the challenges posed by the internet and technological change?
Okay. Well, I think there's a balance that media companies need to achieve, because on the one hand, there's still very lucrative markets in the traditional media space, and on the other hand, we know that trends that we see overseas, it's like looking into a crystal ball. Luckily in this country, because we've had deficiencies in bandwidth and those types of advancements in terms of giving people access to technology, we're a bit behind, so it gives us a view in what's happening in other markets. And we know very clearly that traditional businesses are under pressure, and they will be more under pressure in the future. So as a media group, what we need to do is we need to make sure that the traditional businesses at the moment, which are doing really well, continue to innovate and are maintained, and at the same time we're preparing for a future, so that when those businesses start to decline, we're poised to actually take advantage of the new environment.
Alistair, do you think the fact that we can, because of the lack of bandwidth in South Africa historically, we are in a good position to learn from what we've seen in the US, or do you think the same sort of destructive power of the internet on print media is going to happen here anyway?
I think yes and no. I think that we definitely can learn from the Americans and the Europeans, for that matter, particularly obviously the Americans, because their media market is a lot more cutthroat, a lot of this sort of state-sponsored stuff. And bandwidth has given us a sort of breathing room, but at the same time, certain papers and certain news and certain magazines are not going to survive. I think that's the reality that everyone has to deal with. Is that I don't foresee this entire slaughter of the whole mainstream media being replaced by bloggers. This apocalypse that a lot of people talk about. I don't think that that's going to happen. At the same time, as Elan says, we have to keep innovating, and we have to keep thinking about what actually makes a newspaper and a magazine a magazine. For me, a newspaper isn't actually a piece of paper at all. It's the institution, it's the people that filter the news for you. It's about a filter on the world. Now more than anything else at the Mail and Guardian, and I think Elan will probably see the same, people want to know that something is real, because they get so much information from so many people. You hear that Michael Jackson is dead on Twitter. Do you believe it? Obviously you go and check where, the BBC, maybe us, maybe Times Live, and see has it actually happened. So we can still remain relevant there. The question is the business models and how we transition from with that one foot on the old business models, how we transition to the new ones. And I mean, most of the big players in South Africa are making quite big strides in that direction.
I think Alice's point is very important in that we're not really in the business of ink and paper. Newspapers are a medium, and we're in the business of content and providing people content that's relevant. And I think there, in terms of the competitiveness, it's not so much a case of newspaper versus internet. I think what makes the environment more competitive is the global nature of the digital medium, in a sense that the competition that you face as a media group is it's exponentially different to the competition that you would face in the past. In the old days, if you were a newspaper, you would compete with a few other regional titles, and that was really the extent of the competition. Whereas now, as Alistair said, there's so many sources of information. I mean, if you're interested in Formula One, you would find the best source of Formula One news in the world, and you would have that on your iPad, on your phone, whatever it is. And I think that's where the point of competition really exists. When it comes to music, movies, games, in all these arenas, it's a global competition, and there's no boundaries.
Now the revenue model, the business models and the level of revenue that you're seeing on the digital side, is that going to be enough to fund the sort of journalism that we've seen in the past from traditional in the traditional era of print media? Is the money going to be there to fund the journalism that consumers want?
Well, look, I mean, it's a simple equation. Newspapers generate a lot of advertising revenue. Digital properties in the news space aren't generating those types of revenues because the cost of online advertising is far less. So there is a lot of pressure. I mean, it makes sense that content creation costs a lot of money. And I think that's why a lot of aggregators are doing well in the digital space, because creation of content is expensive. So that is why I think we need to look to other models online around transaction and around subscription, because the advertising model, I think, will only take us so far.
Okay. Just to wrap up, I know that Alistair, the Mail and Guardian has recently launched a Kindle application talking about subscription models. How has that worked out? And
extraordinarily well. Much better than without any marketing. We've got 500 paying subscribers.
Wow.
That's paying for itself multiple times already. We did a bit of tweeting about it. It got out in the press a bit, and we have people, dozens of people signing up every week. So to me, that speaks to Elan's point as well, is that we know that that if we give this beautiful package of weekly content to people in the right format, the format that they like, whether that's Kindle or iPad or the other new tablets that are coming out with Android on them, that people will still want to consume that news in that format. And so, I think that this is just the first step for us. We want to now roll out to all kinds of other platforms so that we can be the man and guardian wherever people happen to be, rather than expecting them to come to us.
Yeah. Elan, just lastly, with these new proliferation of new devices, do you think that it's consumers and readers who are going to fund the journalism in the future rather than it being funded primarily by advertisers?
I think they'll play an important role. Most definitely. I mean, we still aren't sure at what point people will be willing to pay for content and what type of content they'll be willing to pay for. But I think that they will definitely play a role. It's about creating an ecosystem, and the iPad ecosystem is already creating an environment where people are paying for subscriptions.
Right. Okay.
The FT, for example, already has quite a profitable iPad application, and at a very high margin. So there's one example of success.
Great. Elan, Alistair, thank you so much for joining me in the studio today.